We signed the contract in week 8, not because everything went perfectly, because we finally stopped pretending it was. I want to walk you through a real venture client engagement, not the version I would put in a pitch deck, the real version, which is where you can learn a lot. The version where we pick the wrong startup in week 2 and how to go back to the business unit and explain why. Not very nice. The version where the procurement team almost killed the deal on day 43. Most content about the venture client model shows you the framework, which is fine. You need to, a framework to understand the steps and the theory, which is very important as well. But this video shows you what happens inside those steps, the friction, the decisions, the moments where the whole thing almost falls apart, when it's the moment that you as an expert have to take decisions. If you're building or running a venture client program, this is the video I wish someone had made for me 10 years ago. Here is the context. A large corporate, I'm keeping the name anonymous, but the industry is financial services. They decided they want to run a venture client program. Not a pilot fund, not an accelerator, a real venture client program where the goal was to find startups solving actual business problems and buy from them commercially. The business unit we worked with had a specific problem. Their customer onboarding process was too slow. The competitors were onboarding in days. It was very obvious they were very slow. They were taking weeks. The technology team had been trying to fix this internally for 2 years with not high quality results. So the mandate was clear: find a startup that solved this problem, validate them fast, and get to a commercial contract. Simple mandate, right? But a complicated reality. It's not that easy. What I want to show you today is the 3 moments in this engagement where things did not go as planned, what we did about it, and what I would do differently now. Because the venture client model, but it does not work automatically. It is not magic. It works when you understand where the friction is and you are ready for it. Mistake 1. We defined the problem too late. The first mistake we made was a classic one. We started sorting startups before we had a tight problem definition. This is a classic problem. The business unit told us the problem was slow onboarding, which was true. But slow onboarding is a symptom, not a problem itself. When we started talking to startups in week 1, we were showing them a symptom and asking them to pitch us solutions. We got 33 startup responses in the first 2 weeks. 28 of them were irrelevant. Not because the startups were bad, they were, very good, because we had not been specific enough about what we actually needed. And that's the main thing. The actual problem, when we dug deeper, was very specific. The bottleneck was in identity verification. The corporate's legacy system required manual review for 40% of application, which is a lot. A startup that could automate that specific step inside their existing tech architecture was what they needed, So sounds easy, but it took us a lot to identify that. The level of specificity took us 3 weeks to get to. We should have gotten there before we sent a single sourcing message. What's the lesson here? In a venture client program, the problem definition phase is not preparation for the work. It is the work. If you rush it, you waste a week on startups that cannot help you. I now tell every team I work with, spend 2 full weeks doing nothing but problem definition. Interviews, the business unit, talking with the people, checking materials. Map the current process, define the exact point of failure, then go to market. Mistake 2, we picked the wrong startup. By week 4, we had a short list of 4 startups. We ran demos, we scored them, and we picked one. Well, actually two, but we have one specific one. The startup we picked had the best technology, clean products, strong team, good references on paper. The obvious choice, was them. By week 6, we knew we had made a mistake. Not because the startup was bad. Actually, we're a very good team, very nice guys. Because we had evaluated the technology and not the integration path. Their solution required a change to the corporate's core onboarding system. That change needed IT approval, and IT approval in this organization took minimum of 4 months. So, you know what I mean? That was a big problem. We had a great solution, that's right, that could not be deployed in any reasonable timeline. We would need probably another year, but that wasn't possible. We went back to our shortlists. The second startup we had ranked, the one with slightly older technology but a much lighter integration approach, was actually the right choice. We could run their solution as a layer on top of the existing system, which it was perfect. No IT approval needed, no 4 months, direct deployment. We switched in week 7. We signed the contract in week 8 of 9. The lesson here is critical. In venture client, you are not looking for the best startup in the market. You are looking for the best startup for the specific corporate with this specific architecture in this specific window and problem and timeline. Those are the very different searches. Most teams only run the first one. Mistake number 3, we underestimate procurement. Day 43, 45 more or less. We are close to a contract. The startup has been validated. The business unit is ready to buy, and then procurement sends us a list of 25, 28 compliance questions. Okay. This is the moment where most venture clients' program die. Not because procurement is unreasonable. They were very good actually. But because the innovation team did not involve procurement early enough. Procurement sees as startups they had never heard of, no track record with the company, and their job is to protect their organization. So, you have to understand a little bit their work as well. When you show up in week 6, asking them to approve a contract right away with a startup they just learned about, they're going to slow you down. That is their work. They are protecting the corporation. What we should have done, and what I do now in every engagement, is bring procurement into the process in week 2 or 3, no more than that. Not to approve anything, just to inform them. Here is what we are doing. Here is the type of startup we are looking for. Here are the compliance areas they will need to address. So you give them information, you bring them to the table. When you do that, procurement becomes a partner instead of a gatekeeper. They start preparing the contract template. They flag issues early. By the time you arrive with the startup to approve, they have already done half of the work. In this case, we resolved questions in 11 days. It was hard. It added 2 weeks to the timeline, but we closed. It was good. The contract was signed. The startup deployed their solution. Onboarding time dropped by 38, 39% in the first quarter, which is, in their numbers, great. That is a real result, but it came with real friction. It wasn't easy. Here's what I want you to take from this. The venture client model is not magic process. It is a discipline. And like any discipline, it has failure points that you can learn to anticipate. Problem definition takes longer than you think. Startup selection is about fit, not just quality. And procurement is not your enemy at all, but they will become one if you ignore them until the end. I have run programs through Spinner Labs in different companies. The specifics change. The friction points do not. The organizations that get a venture client are the ones that treat these friction points as part of the design, not as surprises, They build in time for the problem definition. They evaluate integration complexity alongside technology quality. They include procurement from day one and many other things as well that I'm not even mentioning. That is the difference between a case study that ends with a contract and one that ends with a pilot that goes nowhere. If you want to go deeper on how to structure a venture client program from the beginning, I cover the full model in the video link above. You're going to see a lot of them in the channel. That is the best place to start if this is new to you. And if you're working through one of these problems right now, come to the Venture Edge newsletter. I write about this every week. The link is in the description below. One question for you for the comments. Which of these 3 friction points is the one you see most often in your organization or other? Problem definition, startup selection, procurement, tell me below. I love if you can share me some of your problems as well. And so everybody in this community can learn. See you soon. Bye. Ciao. Adieu.